Well now, what if you had the power to shape your reality? What if your thoughts weren't just passive reactions, but the very foundation of the world around you? Science, yes, proper science, is now revealing that the way we think, feel, and focus our energy is far more powerful than we ever imagined. So let's take a moment, let's explore the mind's true potential and uncover how you, yes, you, can take control of your thoughts and transform your life.
Outside the fundamental rules of Newtonian physics and 3D reality, you're changing the field and it changes matter instantaneously. So now we're seeing it happen in a shorter amount of time because we're getting better at it. We're connecting to that field more. And I know this to be the case because when I witness it in week-long events, I know the moment. I can tell you when the energy shifts in the room, and now I know it's going to be fun. Now I know, get ready because the miracles are happening. It'll happen in 1 week. You tell me how a tumor can disappear on a person's thyroid. Not one, not two. You tell me how a man with a stroke who's been paralyzed in his arm and leg, that's in his 70s, paralyzed for years, and now lifting his arm above his head. How do you explain that? He didn't do that matter to matter. He didn't change his diet. He didn't do physical therapy. He didn't try to have a good attitude and think positively. There was none of that. Something in the field changed, and the pattern of that condition in the field changed. So it is happening in a shorter amount of time. There is no rule. It's about the person's ability to pay attention and to focus, to be greater than their body, their environment, and time. It's their sincerity. It's the engagement when they go sit down and do it. They're not doing, oh man, I gotta do this. That's the wrong attitude. Nothing's gonna happen then. You get there like, I'm going to connect with the divine. This is gonna be a great day. I'm gonna keep my energy up. I'm not getting up until I feel like I'm empowered. That person's gonna have a rockin' day. They're gonna have a good day.
I think that the greatest belief that you could have is the belief in yourself. And when you believe in yourself, you believe in possibilities. And when you believe in possibilities, you have to believe in yourself. So people that enter this work come with a certain amount of chronic disbelief that they could actually change their life or change their health condition. When you see the scientific research that in 7 days, a novice meditator, their biology literally looks like they're in a different life. Mm-hmm. And they're in a ballroom, and there's nothing very special about a ballroom. I've been to thousands of ballrooms. The environment isn't that stimulating. Those changes are coming from within. You see the data and you look at how cancer cells, actually the energy in cancer cells, when you take the plasma of meditators, advanced meditators, and you subject that plasma to all kinds of cancer cells, it's 70% of the mitochondrial function actually diminishes in the cancer cell. Cancer cells love to multiply and they love to move. You take energy out of the cancer cell, you're taking life out of the cancer cell. When people see that data, it gives them hope. Mm-hmm. It gives them the idea that it's possible now. When someone stands on the stage with stage 4 cancer that has spread to their bones, to the uterus, to their lungs, to their liver, to all the tissues of their body, and you ask any physician who's seen stage 4 cancer in bones, it's very unlikely you're going to see a reversal. And you see the person stand on the stage and tell their story, and it's not glamorous. It's a real life story. And there's no evidence of cancer in any of her tissues any longer, no cancer in her bones. The PET scans show that there's a complete reversal. That's the 4-minute mile. That's the person speaking the truth. And invariably, somebody in the audience is examining that person's story, and they're thinking, if that person can do it, I can do it as well.
And I said, I'd like the radiologist to say, it doesn't even look like Ann scans. And sure enough, I went through the review with my doctors, and they told me everything looked good. And at the very end, the oncologist said, oh, and she was looking at your scan because it didn't look like yours. Looked too good for my history. 9 years ago, I was diagnosed with advanced lung cancer, and as a non-smoker, it was a huge shock. The doctors in the hospital said I had 1 month to live. The cancer was in my brain, my lymph nodes, my lungs, my spine, my hip bone, my liver, spleen. It was very advanced, and at the time I had 3 little kids, so it gave me a lot of motivation. And my husband and I went to work, and we found the best doctors that we could find. And fortunately, I was able to take a targeted treatment that was very effective. I went all standard care, and for about 7 years, I went through cancer treatments. The good news was that they were working. The bad news is that the cancer kept coming back. And doctors not only had told me that 1 month, but as I got better, they said the cancer would keep coming back. So even when I had clear scans, a few months later, I would have a new tumor in my brain. So between the chemotherapy, the radiation, all the different medications I was on, the side effects from those were tremendous. So I was feeling sick from all the medications, not really the cancer anymore. And after many years, you can see how that would take a toll on your life, especially when you're trying to raise little kids and work and all the things you need to do in life. So I knew there was something else out there. A friend had told me about on Gaia, Dr. Joe's formula. And that really planted the seed for me, that there is more to life, there was more to healing than we knew. And I dabbled in it, but I was still kind of in this cultural zone of cancer patient. And then a neighbor told me about Evidence is the Loudest Voice here 2 years ago. And after watching that, I saw these women changing breast cancer cells in a lab. And that, to me, was belief. And so I went on Dr. Joe's website and I watched all the testimonials I could. And those testimonials really solidified my belief that I could be rid of this cancer. I could be actually a healthy person again. And so I started doing the work, blessing up the energy centers every day. I was meditating a lot. Then I recruited my husband, who's very supportive, to go to San Diego for the week long. And I was very fortunate to be selected as a Healy. And as a Healy there, it was an amazing experience. Being in this community with so many people who are ready to open their hearts and heal you was an incredible experience. And I could feel it in my body. And the walking meditations were amazing. And over the course of time, that belief, that transformation within me, I could feel it. I got rid of the medications. All the side effects were gone because it was really based on the medications. And instead of being a fearful cancer patient, I became a loving, healthy person. In San Diego, the walking meditation, A Heart Full of Mind and a Mind Full of Heart, that meditation really got me because when I was first diagnosed, I had also had a stroke in the hospital. So that dark night of the soul, I remember it vividly. But after that, I was standing in a window in the hospital and I had this feeling, this belief that it was going to work out, like I was going to make it. Of course, I lost that belief with all of the cancer treatment and the prognoses. But during that walk, when Dr. Joe talks about your past self, I connected with that person, my old self in that window in the hospital. And it was like a realization that we were connected. That when I had that realization 9 years ago, it was me in that present moment connecting, saying, you're gonna be okay, you're gonna be okay. Continued the work after that event, after being the Healy, and I continued to form that belief within me and really strengthen that belief that I was healed. And I would envision my doctors looking at my MRI of my brain, which it was kind of like Swiss cheese because I had a lot of tumors that were radiated. And I had surgery too, so I just envisioned this MRI being beautiful and clear. And I said, I'd like the radiologist to say, it doesn't even look like Ann scans. And sure enough, I went through the review with my doctors and they told me that everything looked good. At the very end, the oncologist said, oh, and she was looking at your scan because it didn't look like yours. Looked too good, too good for my history. I got the belief from testimonials. So this is a belief for you. As a healie, I was healed, and now I get to be the healer. And so it's with such gratitude that I give this testimonial so that I can empower all of you.
I think the greatest relationship that you could ever have is with yourself. And taking time to be in the presence of yourself and ask yourself important questions like, are you happy? Who am I? And instead of getting up and getting on your cell phone and getting distracted, sit with your triple filtered water or a glass of wine or whatever you're into, JJ. Sit down and answer the question without being distracted. The contemplation process is the building process neurologically. And for me, I was just a guy. I'm a guy who loves God. I'm a guy who loves the divine. I'm a guy who loves mystery. I'm the guy who just never stops dovetailing information. I mean, that's just me. And I never really planned on doing any of this. I mean, my theories on life is make it up as you go along and take the value and run. And what the belief became a sensation. And all of a sudden, I went from a normal guy to being a rock star. And I was traveling around the world and doing conferences all over the place. And I reached this point where I realized that I wasn't living the work. And that really bothered me. I was disturbed by that. I was really uncomfortable. And when you get uncomfortable and nothing's making that discomfort go away, it's time to evolve. It's time to make a different choice. And I clearly heard in my head during one meditation, stop making the same choices and pause. I didn't know what that meant, except that I knew that I was relying on all of this external stimulation to build an identity that I really wasn't. And then I had to show up for people and look a certain way and act a certain way, and that wasn't me. And it got disturbing for me. And I had this gap between the way I appeared and the way I really was. And I didn't make time for myself and make time to be the example. I mean, my motive is always be the example of everything that I teach. If I'm not, I shouldn't be up here. I shouldn't be leading in my clinic if I don't live those principles myself, if I don't live my life that way. And so, you know, at the height of my popularity, I disappeared. I canceled all my events. My friends thought I was on crack or something. They thought I lost my mind. Because you know what? They were saying you could make so much money. And I said, I know how to make money. I really don't care about money. I really don't care. I care about how happy I'm going to be with myself. And I broke from the world for 6 months and retreated. And I really decided that if I presented myself back to the world, that I wasn't going to be seduced by it in the same way. That I really wanted to be the example of everything that I taught, and I wanted to lead events in a way that empowered people. I never wanted it to be about me. I wanted it to be about you.
For centuries, it was believed that the brain was a fixed entity, incapable of significant change after a certain age. However, groundbreaking research in neuroscience has shattered this dogma, revealing the remarkable plasticity of the human brain. Neuroplasticity refers to the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections throughout life. This means that your brain is not a static entity, but a dynamic, ever-evolving organ that can be molded by your experiences, thoughts, and beliefs. Every time you learn something new, engage in a new activity, or even entertain a new thought, you are literally rewiring your brain, creating new neural pathways and strengthening existing ones. The implications of neuroplasticity are profound. It means that you are not bound by your past conditioning or genetic predispositions. You have the power to consciously reshape your brain, to break free from limiting beliefs, and to cultivate new patterns of thought and behavior that support your well-being and aspirations. Through dedicated effort and mindful intention, you can become the architect of your own neural circuitry, shaping your brain to reflect the reality you desire to create. In the quantum realm, energy and information are inextricably intertwined. Everything in the universe, from the smallest subatomic particle to the largest celestial body, is a manifestation of energy vibrating at a specific frequency. Information, encoded within these energetic vibrations, determines the form and function of all matter. Your thoughts and emotions, too, are forms of energy carrying specific information that interacts with the quantum field.
Positive thoughts, characterized by high frequency vibrations, tend to attract positive experiences, while negative thoughts, with their lower frequency vibrations, can attract unwanted circumstances. This is not to say that negative emotions should be suppressed. Rather, it highlights the importance of becoming aware of your thought patterns and their potential impact on your reality. By cultivating a mindful awareness of your thoughts and emotions, you gain the power to choose thoughts that align with your desired outcomes. Just as a skilled gardener tends to their plants, nurturing their growth and removing weeds, you can cultivate a mental landscape that supports your well-being and empowers you to create a life of purpose and fulfillment.
You see, the brain isn't fixed. It's designed to change. The way you think today, it can quite literally reshape your mind tomorrow. This remarkable process, known as neuroplasticity, is the key to unlocking your full potential. Fascinating, isn't it?
Creating the same experiences, you keep feeling the same emotions. I don't know, let's be conservative. You do that for 10 years. You would have to agree with me then that it would become more automatic, it would become more unconscious. So your personality creates your personal reality. That's it. That is it. And your personality is made up of how you think, how you act, and how you feel. So keep thinking the same way, keep acting the same way, keep feeling the same way. Your personality is the same, and your personal reality would be the same as well. So if you wanted to change your life, if you wanted to change your personal reality, you would have to change your personality. And then you'd have to start thinking about what you've been thinking about and decide if you really want to believe that any longer. And when does the story end? It's that moment that you become so conscious of that thought, you're so tired of it, you're so aware of it that you would never let it slip by your awareness ever again. You catch yourself complaining and blaming and making excuses and feeling sorry for yourself, and that's been your unconscious program. Then the moment you become conscious of those unconscious behaviors, you're out of the program. You're only in the program when you're unconscious, and so it takes an enormous amount of energy and awareness to separate from those programs. And then there's those emotions that we feel every single day that are so familiar to us that we don't even know what they are. We just feel guilty. We don't even know it's guilt. It's just how we feel. And the stronger the emotions that we have to experiences in our life, the more altered we are inside of us. When the chemistry changes inside of us, the brain narrows the focus on the cause and takes a snapshot or a series of snapshots, and that's called a long-term memory. And so then it makes total sense then that the person, by every time they relive that event in their life, they're making the same chemistry in their brain and their body, and their body's literally believing it's living that experience over and over again. And now the body's so in the past that it's the mind of the past. So then the act of becoming so conscious that you don't go unconscious is a changing of consciousness. How many times do we have to forget until we stop forgetting and start remembering? That is the moment of change.
Knowing this, well, that's not enough. You have to act on it. The only way to truly transform your life is to break free from those old, familiar patterns and start making choices that align with the future you, the one you're meant to become.
But not only that, you have to then understand that when you truly do this properly, you're not waiting for your healing to feel whole. You're not waiting for your success to feel empowered. You're not waiting for your wealth to feel abundant. You're not waiting for your new relationship to feel love. You're not waiting for the mystical moment to feel awe. That's the old model of reality, of cause and effect, waiting for something outside of you to change how you feel inside of you. And when you feel better inside, then you pay attention to whoever, whatever caused that. That's cause and effect. And when you begin to make the correlation between what changed you from outside and inside, you create an associative memory. The quantum model of reality begins to say then you have to teach your body emotionally how that future is going to feel like before it's made manifest. In other words, you have to feel awe in order for the mystical moment to happen. You have to feel abundance before your wealth can occur. You have to feel in love with life before your new relationship happens. And so we're not defining reality by our senses, because we're not waiting then for anything outside of us to change how we feel inside of us. So if there's physical evidence in your brain and body to look like the experience has already occurred, physical evidence, because the epigenetic model of reality says you can change your body by thought alone, and neuroplasticity says you can change your brain by thought alone. So if there's physical evidence to look like the experience has already occurred, well, relax, because the experience is going to find you, and it's going to come in a way that you least expect. Consistent action. Why? Because meditation, the actual translation of the word meditation, means to become familiar with. So the first thing you have to do is you have to become conscious of your unconscious thoughts. You got to notice your automatic habits and behaviors. And you have to become aware of your emotions that keep you anchored to the past. And if you can become so conscious of the unconscious states of mind and body that they would never slip by your conscious awareness again, you're becoming familiar with the old self so you don't return. Then if you begin to think about new ways of being defined by a vision, plan your behaviors, review them in your mind. Now, if you keep doing that over and over again, nerve cells that fire together wire together. You begin to become familiar with a new state of mind. At the same time, if you can emotionally cultivate your inspiration, your joy, your enthusiasm ahead of the experience, by repeating that over and over again, cultivating that state, it's going to begin to become familiar to you. So then the process of change then requires unlearning and relearning. The challenge is then to every day be defined by a vision of the future. So then when you combine a clear intention, that's a thoughtful process, with an elevated emotion, a heartfelt state of being, thoughts are the language of the brain, feelings are the language of the body. When you truly do that, your brain and body are living in the future instead of living in the past, and you're going to be drawn to some new event, because thoughts are the electrical charge in the quantum field, and feelings are the magnetic charge. And how you think and how you feel broadcasts an electromagnetic signature that influences every single atom in your life. So here's the question then. The fundamental question is, it's going to take time to pull your brain and body out of the past and continuously invest your energy into the future. So can you then maintain that vision, that view of your future, independent of the conditions in your environment, independent of the emotional addictions or conditionings or habits of the body, and independent of time? Because if you can, that's what greatness is all about. That's when we begin to truly change. And people around the world are doing this consistently, and they're doing it really well because it's our natural, innate way of being. We are creators.
The greatest transformations? They happen when you align your thoughts and emotions with the future you truly desire. But does this really work? Well, let's take a look at real people who've applied these principles and witnessed profound changes in their lives.
Later, I was in a minor car accident, and on all scans, my back wasn't fractured. I had a couple discs that were bulging and a couple tears in my annular fissures, but it was debilitating for me. I had spinal trauma that Western medicine did not know what to do. There were different surgeries that were proposed that wanted to surgically operate in different parts of my spine. The accident affected the areas of T12 to S1, but there wasn't a clear-cut Western medical option for what I was experiencing. And I tried everything. I think I did every modality, Western, other than surgery, and also alternative at that time, acupuncture, energy work, shamanic energy work. I did herbal medicine, Chinese herbs, you name it, I did it. I couldn't sit, I couldn't bend. I almost had to use a wheelchair or a cane, but I refused. I just sat at home, and I learned I had to let go of a lot of things. I had to sell my home, I had to give up my job, I had to really grapple with the fact that I was now physically disabled. For a very active woman, this was a very big deal. I became very interested in Dr. Joe's work after I went to a retreat where I heard Dr. Bruce Lipton talk about Dr. Joe in the year 2017. I started doing his work diligently 7 years ago. I read all his books twice, did a progressive and intensive. It was at that time that I heard about Dr. Joe's events. I was on a list. I got an email to be a remote Healy for the Cancun event in 2020 that changed the trajectory of my healing. I received the inner guidance from those healings that I could heal myself, and that to just have the patience and the trust and the ability to surrender to the process, and that all would be well. On a physical level, I didn't see much change, and it took a long time. It's been a very gradual process. It's been one day I can move my pinky toe. On the other day, I can now flex my foot. I wasn't able to do that. It's been so slow and so gradual that there were times when I was just in despair, but I kept doing the work. And I watched thousands of testimonials. I think I've watched each of them twice that had to do with spinal cord injuries or any kind of neurological mobility issues. I knew I had to overcome myself and my patterns and all of that, and I had to take care of that piece because that was what was key for my healing. This wasn't about a physical journey anymore. This was about a spiritual, mental, a whole body, whole life experience. I came back for my second follow-up, and I felt a sense of peace and calmness. I was walking better. I ran on the beach. I mean, these are things I had not been able to do. The doctor who was overseeing my care, who is a physiatrist who specializes in regenerative medicine, he looked at me and he said, "Well, what are you doing?" And I told him about Dr. Joe, and he said, "I have got to read the books." I'm pleased to say that my story inspired him.
And you're living in survival, and that system is switched on, then everything will be a threat. Everything will be a danger. Everything will be a reason to rush, to be impatient, to be frustrated, to be judgmental, because that's the consciousness, that's the emotion we're living by. So now you have a problem with a coworker, you have a problem with your partner, whatever it is that you used as an example, and you have to give a presentation. Now you really have one of two choices: either be victimized by those conditions in your life and you stay in that emotional state, and I'll say to you, "Jay, why are you that way?" "Well, I'm this way because of this person, this circumstance." The person or circumstance is controlling the way I feel and the way I think. Anything that controls the way I feel and the way I think, I'm victim to, right? Okay. Or I actually can be a creator now. Okay, so when it's the hardest, it matters the most. Okay, so there's going to be a story, a valid story that's going to go along with those emotions that you're going to have to give up, that you can address at another time from a different state. If you're altered in that state and you say something, you do something, you write the email, you send the text, you'll always regret it. You'll always say, "I should have never said that. I should have never done that." We got to learn that we're in an altered state at that time. So there's only one of two choices. You either stay there the whole day and tell everybody that story, or you say, "Okay, let me take a moment. Remember that this is the experiment called life. Okay, let me practice getting relaxed in my heart. Let me slow the animal down. Let me practice. I'll take a few minutes. Now, let me breathe. Let me get my state back. Let me change everything. Okay, let me remember who I am, who I want to be when I open my eyes, and let me practice that again." Now, even if you had to do that 10 times in one day, I would say it was a day worth living. I would say it was a day worth living. And when we do walking meditations in our retreats, we're doing walking meditations so you can practice doing it with your eyes open.
Yes.
Like if you're going to be relaxed in your heart and awake in your brain, and you can do it with your eyes closed, okay, let's take it out for a test drive.
Yeah.
Let me open my eyes. Let me pay a little bit more attention to my inner world. Let me practice feeling this feeling. Let me practice feeling this way, and let my brain do what it does. Let me finally change my physiology. Let me change my state. Let me walk as the healed person. Let me walk as the abundant person. Let me walk as if my prayers are answered. Let me walk in this state. If I keep practicing that over and over, it's going to become a habit, right?
Yeah.
So we hit it as many ways as we can. We have at least 7 or 8 different breaths that we do because we see how they all work in the brain. We have all kinds of meditations. We have sitting meditations. We have standing and walking meditations. We have laying down meditations because we want you to be able to do it with your eyes open, with your eyes closed, standing, walking, any way you can so that you don't default and return back to that person. Now, if you do default, you didn't fail. That's a program. You just went unconscious. And how many times do we have to forget until we stop forgetting and start remembering? That's the moment of change. No one cares how many times you fell off the bicycle. If you ride the bicycle now, you ride the bike. So it's the constant process every single day. And I think that sometimes we look for evidence in our life and it hasn't happened. And I think it's so important that we still show up.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's where you're changing the most. And when you get to that point where you could care less if it happens or not, because you feel so happy, so grateful for who you are, get ready because your life is going to begin to change in magical ways.
We've been primed over time for thousands of years that the unknown is a scary place. And so then, by thinking the same thoughts, by making the same choices, by doing the same things that create the same experiences, that produce the same feelings and emotions in time, and those emotions begin to influence your very same thoughts, causes our biology to stay exactly the same. And so we afford people new information, new knowledge, new understandings, new philosophy, new theory, and we inspire them to make new choices, to begin to do new things and break the old habit and relearn, to create new experiences and produce new emotions. And in just a matter of 4 days, people begin to upregulate genes that begin to heal their body and change the way their body functions just by changing the way they think, changing the way they act, and changing the way they feel. The problem is that the brain and body locked into the past, clinging to the known and familiar, where the body has been conditioned to be the mind. The moment a person decides to do something differently or make a different choice, they feel uncomfortable because they've left the known and they've left the familiar. And if the body has been conditioned to be the mind, the animal, the servant, is now the master. And it wants to return back to familiar territory. And as we step out into the unknown and we feel that discomfort, the uncertainty, not being able to predict the next moment, the body begins to influence the mind, and we start to hear the same thoughts. And if we respond to that thought that's hardwired in the brain, and we accept it, we believe it, we surrender to it without saying, is this the truth? That same thought leads to the same choice, which leads to the same behavior, which creates the same experience and produces the same feeling and the same emotion. And the person says, this feels right to me. But all it is that it feels familiar. And so the process of change then is to become conscious of your unconscious thoughts. And the more conscious you become of your unconscious thoughts, the less you will go unconscious to them in your waking day.
The breath is incredibly powerful for transformation. It forces you to really be in the present moment, so you're not dragging your past around with you. I'm not special. I'm an ordinary person. I was a mess when I first came to Dr. Joe. I had spinal injuries. I had 3 traumatic brain injuries, more than 5 concussions. I had chronic migraines that kept me in a dark room for a month at a time, in complete silence. I had PTSD, clinical PTSD, very severe. And I had vestibular dizziness that if I stood up, I would fall down a lot. That's why I lost track of how many concussions I had. I'd black out and fall down. And I also had an inoperable brain aneurysm. And this was from several injuries. And of course, I believed in all the doctors. I took all the medicines they prescribed for me. I wasn't organic. I had never meditated. I was just a normal secular person who believed in doctors and pharmacies. And whatever they told me, I did. And until it got to the point that I was so doped up on all these pills that I was literally a zombie. I did the progressive and intensive at home. So by the time I got to the retreat, I had some basic understanding. But I was such a mess that I just sat in my chair with my back brace, my sunglasses, my earplugs, hunched over with my head in my hands half the time or over my ears. And I just listened. And absorbed. And after 3 days, I sat up in my chair and I said to myself, I am not my body. And I took off my sunglasses, my earplugs, my back brace, and I got up and I went to the front of the room. And I stood in front of the biggest speaker I could find. And I just started dancing like a maniac. And that was the beginning of my transformation. After the first traumatic brain injury, I was left with a very severe case of tinnitus. It was so loud, it was like a train going through my head. And it was nonstop. It was all the time. I never had any relief from it. And I had completely forgotten for years what silence was like. And I had to really turn up the volume on music or even listening to people because the tinnitus was so loud. And recently at a retreat, I was doing the breath. We were doing a meditation and Dr. Joe was explaining the breath again. And it struck me in a little bit of a different way. And I was able to relax into the breath and stop thinking about the technique. And I, at one point, just became the breath. It just became me. And it just shot up into my brain. And I heard kind of like a little pop or a click or something. And the tinnitus was completely gone. I had to still work on all the emotional and psychological patterns and habits and programs that had caused me to be in those situations where I was injured in the first place. But it's been 7+ years and I am happier, healthier, stronger than I think I've ever been in my life since I was a teenager. I'm 69 years old and I take no medicine whatsoever. And so I want you all to know that this really works. And it's not just something that comes and goes. It's, like I said, 7 years. And I just keep getting better and better and stronger and stronger. I'm pain-free, I'm very active, and I just want you to get what I got.
My daughter, who was 22 at the time, had read all of Dr. Joe Dispenza's books. And she came to me and she said, Mom, there is something you can do. This is not going to get you. You don't have to listen to the doctors. You don't have to be a statistic. In June of 2019, I was diagnosed with lung cancer, and I was a single mom with 4 daughters, and it was a pretty serious diagnosis, and it was pretty devastating to me and my girls. And as I started my journey, I was not in a good headspace, and I was pretty down, and the doctors always give you the worst case scenario. And then it metastasized, and so they said, well, you now have stage 4 metastatic lung cancer and you're terminal. And so they didn't even want to take out the metastasis where it had metastasized. So I had to find my own surgeon to do that. But in the meantime, my daughter, who was 22 at the time, had read all of Dr. Joe Dispenza's books. And she came to me and she said, "Mom, there is something you can do. This is not going to get you. You don't have to listen to the doctors. You don't have to be a statistic." And it took me about 6 months to get on board because I was not in a good place. But I finally started reading them and I was hooked. I read constantly. I had them on Audible constantly, all of them. When I was in my car, when I was walking, running, everything. So that is what gave me the courage to find a surgeon who could take out the metastasis and say, no, I'm not going to let this beat me. I'm not going to listen to the statistics. What really helped me get through all of this, I was doing chemo, I was doing radiation. It was a lot to deal with, and I was trying to be a mom to my girls. And what helped me was Dr. Joe's teachings. All the science. I started meditating. I wasn't a good meditator by any means. I was a beginner. But just hearing him every day tell me of the healings, of the miracles, of the science, of the statistics is what kept me going. Eventually, we got into a week-long retreat, my daughter and I had just finished chemo, which did not help. I had done all the radiation and I had a scan 3 weeks before I came. They had taken out almost all of my right lung, so I had just had the upper lobe left. And they said, "We're sorry to tell you, but it's back in your upper lobe, the little piece of lung you have left." And I was devastated. On the second day, one of the volunteers came up and said, "Hey, we want you to do the coherence tear lens." And I was so grateful. And at that point, I was still not doing well with meditation. I was okay. But we did a meditation on the third day, I think it was, the heart and brain coherence meditation. And that was the first meditation that I had ever done where I was not there anymore. And I was somewhere else. And so after that, we did the coherence healings. And I can't even tell you, there's no words to say how you feel in those. Just the power of the energy when everyone walked into the room is silent, but you can feel them when they walk in. It is literally like angels walking into the room. It is so powerful. And how I felt, I will never forget. And I will be forever grateful. And my daughter got to be part of one of them, which I'm extremely grateful for. But all of those people were angels in my life. I saw a bright white light. I thought, why do they have this spotlight on me? I wish they would, shut it off. It's so bright. But it was just this white, bright light. And I knew that I was healed. I went home and I've had scans every 3 months. And I had one the week before I came here, and I've been cancer-free ever since. So it's not only changed my life, but all my girls' lives, all the people in my life. And before I left that beach in Cancun, because Dr. Joe always tells you, you have to leave the sick person behind and you have to leave as a new person. So I went down to the beach where I had spent a lot of time while I was there, and below this tree where I had meditated, and I told myself I was leaving the old self there, and I wrote all my kids' names and my grandkids' names in the sand so that my old self wouldn't be lonely. And then I left her there, and she hasn't come back.